Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
He's recognized. Gentleman's
Thank you
recognized.
again, Speaker. Today I rise in opposition to this resolution. You know, there was a lot I could say and thought about saying about this resolution and the one that we'll see after it. I could talk about how badly these two measures undermine conservation efforts for species that are endangered, threatened across our nation and across the globe. I could talk about how these resolutions give industry and not science the upper hands in making decisions about endangered species. I could talk about how this latest offering from Team Extreme takes the GOP's vendetta against the Endangered Species Act to a level that should offend us all. But as I thought about it, I realized that what's more offensive than these resolutions themselves is the fact that these resolutions are on the floor right now, today. We are about to leave the House floor for 6 weeks. By the time we come back, summer will be nearly over. And if the current temperatures stay on track, it'll be one of the most brutal summers in this country's recorded history. In my home state of Arizona, Phoenix has broken records, which is now a 27-day streak of more than 110-degree heat. In Florida, the ocean heat wave has warmed the waters to 5 to 7 degrees above normal. That level of heat is a disaster for corals, marine life, and all the businesses and local economies that depend on them. And tragically, last month, a heat dome in Texas was so oppressive that it claimed 13 lives. That also happened to be the same month that was awarded the grim honor of being the hottest June ever on record, and July isn't looking any different. Climate change isn't about some distant warning about melting ice caps in the far-off future. The climate crisis is here. It is now. People are suffering, people are dying, and the GOP isn't doing a thing about it. This year, the Natural Resources Committee, the Republican majority, has had 0 hearings on climate change. They've introduced 0 bills to seriously address climate change. They've introduced 0 bills to help communities being hurt by climate change. And they've accepted 0 Democratic amendments to include climate change in any of their legislation. And today, Republicans have decided that the most important thing they could do before we leave for 6 weeks would be a couple of resolutions to kill off the lesser prairie chicken and the northern long-eared bat. We are about to go back to our districts, where our constituents will have questions about what we're doing to protect their homes, their businesses, their livelihoods from increasing threats of climate change and the crisis upon us. I have to wonder if my Republican colleagues think that bullying chickens and bats will be a sufficient answer. I don't agree. And I'm certain our constituents won't agree either. Fortunately for Democrats, we can assure our constituents that we passed the country's biggest ever investment in climate and clean energy through the Inflation Reduction Act last year, and that the Biden administration is working to get that funding out the door as quickly and as equitably as possible. Against ongoing efforts through appropriations to defund those initiatives and to dismantle, as we see today, existing environmental protections. And, unfortunately, for the big gas and big oil industry in this country to make Americans more and more dependent on fossil fuels as their source of energy, and thus increasing the climate crisis that we are experiencing now. Common sense says that the new party in charge of the House would want to keep that historic momentum going, but sometimes common sense ain't that common. I urge my colleagues to vote no on these resolutions. I urge my Republican colleagues to come back in September with a better plan to help the American people than a couple of go-nowhere resolutions that beat up on bats and chickens. I reserve the balance of my time.